This is Pete Fader from the Marketing Department at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, and I'm here today with Rob Markey from Bain Consulting to talk about his new book, The Ultimate Question 2.0. Rob, it's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Pete. It's great to be here.
Before we jump in and talk about the book, first, can you tell us what all this NPS stuff is all about? Those three letters are on everyone's mind these days. A lot of businesses are being run by them. So before we talk about the implications of it, tell us what NPS stands for.
Well, NPS, originally when we started, it stood for the Net Promoter Score. And it was designed as a way to help, marketers, operations folks, call center operators, business leaders figure out the extent to which they were really meeting their objective of earning the loyalty of their customers. And the way that you get your Net Promoter Score is that you ask this one simple question: how likely would you be to recommend my company, my product, my service to your friends, your colleagues, your family members? And based on the answer to that question, we can then sort customers into promoters, the people who are enthusiastically loyal to your brand, your company, your product, and are out there telling all their friends and personally buying more, staying longer, helping build your business. The passives, people who are, passively positive. They think your stuff is okay. And then the worst group, the detractors, people who just really dislike doing business with you. They would leave if they had a choice. They tell their friends how terrible it is to work with you. And you get your Net Promoter Score by taking those promoters and subtracting out the detractors to get that net score.
Mm-hmm. And so the research that you've been involved with and Fred Reichheld has done, both in the current book and the previous book, has shown that this NPS score has just some amazing associations with other more bottom-line oriented business metrics. Tell us about those.
Well, the essence of it boils down to the fact that individual customers behave consistently with the designation promoter, passive, detractor. So if you were a promoter, you'd be buying more, staying longer, telling your friends, building the business, and a detractor doing just the opposite. That's the foundation. On top of that, what we discovered is that if you aggregate all the promoters and detractors and create that net score, and then compare one company's score to another company's score in the same industry, in the same market, you'll find that the one that has a higher score tends to outgrow the one with the lower score. And in fact, the Net Promoter Score leader in an industry, in a market, tends to outgrow its competitors by a factor of more than 2.5 to 1. Mm-hmm. So that right there actually was the thing that started to really make this catch on, because people understood suddenly, if I can grow my Net Promoter Score, then I can get more customers to stay longer, buy more, tell their friends. I can outgrow my competitors, and I can even, in some cases, achieve a cost advantage.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we move on from Net Promoter Score to Net Promoter System, I have to admit my initial bias, my skepticism. As a marketing professor, as someone who focuses on measurement, when it first came out, my reaction was it's too simple. And knowing that there are so many colleagues in the field and other companies who have been working on very similar kinds of measurement issues, but capturing, for instance, the multidimensional aspect to satisfaction or loyalty, my reaction was you can't boil it all down to one thing and have it work for you. So your reaction to that?
Well, you can't, actually. The truth is that the Net Promoter Score is designed to be radically simple, not because it's statistically better, but instead because it's statistically fine, and that simplicity appeals to frontline employees, and even CEOs can understand it. Mm-hmm. So this designation, promoter, passive, detractor, based on one question, it's a simplifying construct that helps motivate, inspire people to want to create more promoters and fewer detractors. If you really wanted a statistically robust thing that was far, that all it was about the statistically accurate correlations, you'd always go for more questions. Mm-hmm. But what we found is that there's about a 10 or 15% improvement by adding more questions in terms of statistical accuracy, but it tremendously degrades your ability to motivate the organization to take action, because then you get into these debates. Well, what are the questions that are part of the index, and how are they weighted? And I don't know, maybe that question isn't relevant for my business. And then you end up debating the score and not actually focusing on what matters, which is getting your customers to stay longer, buy more, and tell their friends.
And indeed, what you just described is very consistent with the academic research, which shows that a richer, multidimensional scale can be, say, 10 to 15% better. But that this one question, this ultimate question, really is good enough. So in the academic community, it's kind of a half full, half empty. I'm a half full kind of guy, saying, give me a measure that's good enough, one that managers can actually appreciate, understand, implement, spread throughout the organization, and it raises the whole idea of measurement and understanding customer differences to a level that we've never seen before in any organization.
Well, we're proud of what we've been able to accomplish from a practical perspective with Net Promoter Score. I think what motivated us to start thinking about NPS, those three letters as standing for the Net Promoter System, was that the appeal of this radically simple approach actually got, just like happened with Six Sigma or happened with other management tools. Some companies were using it really well, and other companies, honestly, all they were doing is calculating a score, and then it wasn't impacting their business. And they were saying, well, we're not getting any impact here. Why, we're measuring what's going on. And that frustration that they felt and that we felt watching them led us down this path of trying to discover what are the differences between the companies that are getting real impact and the companies that are failing. Mm-hmm. And that led to this insight that there are these three things that the successes are doing that the failures aren't. Mm-hmm. And that was the foundation of the Net Promoter System.
So let's hear about them.
Okay. Well, the first one is that the companies that were doing really well had a really robust and thorough way of collecting the data to create a reliable score, a reliable outcome metric. The foundation of the application of this was built out in some ways at GE, where they were trying to apply Six Sigma to service operations and sales. Mm-hmm. And you can't apply Six Sigma unless you have a reliable way of identifying a defect and a success. And Net Promoter became that outcome metric for them. Well, if the fundamental outcome metric is unreliable because you fail to sample appropriately or because you're asking the question in a way that frames it with prior questions, or because you're inconsistent about the set of products, services, you have no basis for making decisions about where the defects lie and where the opportunities are to create promoters. So, foundationally, number one, robust score. Number two, and this is maybe most important, the successes were using the feedback that came out of Net Promoter as the basis for fast cycle, closed loop learning action, and service recovery. Mm-hmm. So instead of just treating this as a score to calculate and something to measure, they were actually turning it into an operational, functional part of their business. They'd take the feedback directly from a customer, give it within 24 hours to the employee who had been most responsible for creating the outcome, and then coach them on how to improve. So that timing is important because if I'm the person serving you, I can remember the interaction we had that created your feedback, as opposed to what we traditionally do where we aggregate months of data, give an employee like an average score and say, okay, improve. So this closed loop became the second thing we discovered. And then the third, in a way, it sounds so trite and obvious, but the companies that were successful, they believed deeply from the senior leadership on down that earning the loyalty of their customers was really critically important to their business strategy, that was how they were going to grow profitably. And the score was a way of, and the system were a way of helping achieve that objective. The failures, almost invariably, they set a goal on a number. Hey, we want our Net Promoter Score to be higher than it is today, or we want to earn the J.D. Power Award. And then they delegated it to like the head of service or somebody deep in the organization and said, okay, go do that and tell me how it goes.
So for those firms that really embrace it, as you just said, there's going to be more broader, more fundamental organizational changes So tell us how companies have realigned themselves around the Net Promoter System.
Oh, it's a big deal. It actually, what sounds so simple, this sorting your customers into promoters, passives, detractors, turns out in practice to have profound impacts for your culture, the way you organize, the processes by which you run the business. So as an example, you've got, in most of the companies that are doing this really well, this infrastructure, data infrastructure, financial infrastructure to help figure out which customers are promoters and passives and detractors, take action against that, and figure out what the value would be of improving, of turning a detractor into a promoter, or turning hundreds or thousands of customers from detractors into promoters. You end up having the guys in product development suddenly changing the way that they think about success. Instead of just getting the product launch out and having lots of initial sales to the channel, they now not only have to have lots of initial sales, but they have to have high Net Promoter Score. In fact, at Logitech, each successive product release has to have a higher Net Promoter Score than the one before it. Or at Intuit, they do the same thing. And it actually changes their perspective in the development of new products.
So going one step further, so not only is it going to realign a company to do what it does better, I'm interested in the step beyond that. So as you know, I have a recent book on customer centricity saying that companies need to be following a fundamentally different strategy. Let's sort out different kinds of customers, the good from the bad, and realign everything we do from product development on down around the better kinds of customers. Are we seeing fundamental shifts in strategy as people have something like NPS to guide them?
We are, although I would say that the companies that are successful actually start with the principles that you're talking about, Pete. Net Promoter System works best when it's embedded in a culture in a company that fundamentally believes that earning more loyalty from the profitable customers is the strategic outcome that they're trying to create. And the Net Promoter System helps provide guidance about where to focus, what actions to take to get there, and how to help individual employees, tens, hundreds, thousands of individual employees align their actions around that objective. But that doesn't substitute for business strategy. And what you're talking about, and I love your new book, what you're talking about there is the more fundamental question, well, which customers' loyalty should I be striving to earn because they are the ones that offer the greatest potential in the marketplace, and because my company has skills, capabilities, market position that allow us to be more successful with that group of customers.
Great. So thinking about the future, we've gone from Net Promoter Score, a particular measurement device, to Net Promoter System, a broader system to help companies better appreciate and leverage what they got out of that score. I know that the book is new. You're out there trying to get more companies to fully understand what this new NPS is all about. But thinking ahead 2-3 years, what's next? What's the next level to add to it?
I think you're going to see two big areas of focus from us and from our clients, the members of the NPS Loyalty Forum. One, over the last few years, we haven't written a lot about it, but we mention it in the book, significantly more focus on this linkage between employee advocacy and customer advocacy, recognizing that it is very hard to sustain high levels of customer focus, of customer centricity, of customer advocacy, unless you have also earned the same thing from your own employees. And that there are specific things that you can do on the employee advocacy side that lend themselves more to customer advocacy. So that's one. And then the second one is around innovation and design for delight, as some people call it, or the process of designing products, services, value propositions that will differentially create promoters. I think in the early days, partly because its foundation was like at GE with Six Sigma defect elimination, a lot of the emphasis was on rooting out those defects, the things that create detractors. And now we are spending a lot more of our energy around the things that you can do to create promoters and even to what we call activate promoters. Give your promoters a voice, give them a story to tell, a reason to get excited about talking to their friends about your company.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you, Rob. Want to encourage everyone to take a look at Ultimate Question 2.0. It's been a pleasure having Rob Markey here with us today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pete.